Welcome to Therapy Shorts 48. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Change has a way of finding us long before we feel ready for it. It taps on our windows, waits patiently, then eventually walks through our door, whether we invite it in or not. Most of us spend years trying to outrun it, clinging to routines, relationships and roles that once made sense but no longer fit. Yet somewhere underneath the resistance, we know the truth. Life doesn't stay still, and neither can we. In my work as a therapist, I've seen the same pattern over and over. People aren't lost because they lack insight. They're lost because insight alone isn't enough. Awareness tells us what's wrong. Action is what transforms it. And it's in that space between knowing and doing where so many people become stuck, exhausted, or afraid. This is where our stories, our self-esteem, and our inner critics collide. This is where we decide whether we grow or whether we repeat the cycle. So what follows today is a conversation about that space, about why taking action feels so hard, why waiting rarely helps, and how you can begin to move steadily, realistically, and with compassion for yourself towards the life you already know you need to live. Change is rarely an easy process to go through. It's unsettling. It pushes us out of our comfort zone and demands that we are honest with ourselves, something we might have been avoiding. For some, change means a fresh start. For others, it brings fear and threat. Doesn't matter how we relate to it. One thing is clear. Our view of change will determine how difficult the process will become. I've written often on my blog about how self-esteem, or indeed lack of it, can affect our decision-making. When we don't feel worthy, even small choices can become difficult and carry a lot of weight. I see this clearly in my client work. Many of them are clear on what needs to happen in their lives, which means awareness is there. Yet bridging that gap between knowing that and doing something about it seems impossible. One thing is always true in these cases, and no matter the story behind it, if someone is not willing to act in their own best interest, nothing will change. No amount of therapy, reading, journaling, or insight can change personal responsibility. It's far easier to shift blame to something or someone else. I see this dynamic appearing most intensely in relationships. Clients in couples therapy will arrive with all the evidence they need to say the relationship is at an end. Emotional distance and deprivation and sometimes abuse is present. Even then, taking the steps to change seems unbearable. I'm always clear with these couples that unless one or the other is in danger of physical harm, it's not my job to tell them to end the relationship. However, it is my job to tell them and help them understand the reality in front of them, the likely outcomes of staying or leaving, or whether they are prepared to face those outcomes. Many of them aren't. Sometimes I hear regularly, I'll do this when, and you can put any kind of time zone that you like in this. I'll do this after Christmas. I'll do this after his or her birthday. I'll do this after the dog's birthday. This is clearly a delaying tactic or procrastination at hand. Yet the relationship is likely the very thing that's draining the energy needed for change. It becomes a loop. No strength to change and no strength while still in the loop. Nobody who wants to change something about their life should do it impulsively or in moments of panic. I suggest to individuals and couples that they create a realistic action plan and give themselves a realistic time frame to work it through. Yet many people remain in an extended state of limbo, aware but unmoving. That's usually due to a mix of fear, denial, and the inner critic running the show. When I think about change, I'm always reminded of Bill Shankly. He was a very famous football, or for the Americans, soccer manager in the 1970s. When he was rebuilding the great Liverpool team of the 70s, he once said, "If you want the tree to grow, cut out the dead wood first." He was talking, of course, about rebuilding a football team, but the principle applies everywhere. Growth demands clarity, and it demands courage. It demands letting go of what's already finished. Whether that dead wood is a relationship, a job, a belief system, or an outdated coping strategy, refusing to release it only keeps us stuck. The moment we finally cut it away, something remarkable happens. The weight eases, the air clears, and genuine forward movement becomes possible. The truth is, most people don't struggle with what to do. They struggle with giving themselves the permission to do it. That's where so many people get tangled, waiting for confidence, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for someone else to validate their decisions or indeed make them for them. But clarity doesn't arrive through waiting. Confidence doesn't arrive through waiting. Action is what generates both. I often say to clients, you don't need a perfect plan, you need the next step. The human nervous system is wired to tolerate small, manageable moves far better than sweeping change. Big leaps look heroic in films and movies, but real life is built in increments. So if the idea of ending a relationship, changing a job, setting a boundary or stepping into a new version of yourself feels overwhelming, that's fine. It's meant to feel overwhelming. Your job is not to eliminate the discomfort. Your job is to decide if that discomfort is no longer the enemy. If you want to create action, be very clear about this. Fear will always travel with you. It doesn't disappear through reading or insight. It softens only when it realizes you're moving. And once you take that step, even a tiny one, fear recalibrates. Suddenly the mountain becomes walkable. Suddenly the thing you thought would destroy you feels less like a threat and more like a challenge you can meet. So let's look at some ways that you can do this. So, how exactly do you start? Number one, name the exact thing that you are avoiding. Not the story around it, not the surface level complaint, the real thing. I am avoiding telling my partner the relationship is over. I am avoiding applying for the job because I'm scared of rejection. I am avoiding setting boundaries with my mother because I fear her reaction. Avoidance thrives in vagueness. Clarity exposes it. Then you can decide what acting in your own best interest looks like today and not next month. Most people design plans for a future version of themselves, who is braver, more rested, less overwhelmed. That future self rarely arrives. Ask instead, what does one tiny act of self-respect look like at this moment? Shorten your timeline, a surprisingly effective tool. If you give yourself six months to make a decision, your nervous system takes 6 months to panic about it. If you give yourself 72 hours, the energy becomes focused, clear, contained. You don't need to resolve your whole life, you just need a deadline for the next step. Challenge the inner critic with evidence, not emotion. If your critic says you can't cope alone, list every moment you have coped. If it says you'll regret this, ask based on what? Critics speak in absolutes, rarely in facts. Facts will ground you. Expect grief, not just relief. Creating change is an act of self-respect, but it almost always includes grief. Grief for lost time, old versions of you, failed relationships, or the identity you've outgrown. People panic when grief arrives, believing it means they've made the wrong choice. In truth, grief only means you finally made the right one. Lean on structure and not willpower. Write a simple sequence. What I need to do, by when. What will I need to support myself? What will I do when fear shows up? Structure holds you when emotions run hot. Another way is to use the ABC. A is your current scenario, C is where you want to get to, and B is how you want to get there. Stay brutally honest with yourself. If you're delaying, call it delaying. If you're scared, admit you're scared. Honesty doesn't weaken you, it stabilizes you. The moment you stop lying to yourself, action becomes far more accessible. And finally, remember, action is rarely comfortable, but it's always clarifying. Stagnation feels safe, but it corrodes. Movement feels threatening, but it frees. Once you cut away the dead wood, the first breath of fresh air is unmistakable. It's the moment your life starts growing again. So underneath this video will be some journaling questions and also a final takeaway from today. Thank you for listening and see you next time.